Chapters 21 and 22 of Napoleon and Josephine, The Rise of the Empire, by Walter Geer. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. 21, 1807. Madame Valeska. On the first day of the new year, when the Emperor was returning from Pultusk to Warsaw, he stopped to change horses at the gate of the little city of Bronia. At that time Napoleon was the idol of the Poles, who hoped through him to secure their independence, and an enthusiastic crowd had gathered to welcome the "liberator." Duroc descended from the carriage, and with difficulty pushed his way through the throng. Someone touched his arm, and he turned to look into the large, innocent blue eyes of a young girl who seemed almost a child. Her beautiful face, fresh as a rose, was flushed with excitement. Her figure was small but perfectly proportioned. She was very simply dressed, and wore a black hat with a heavy veil which almost concealed her blonde hair. As Duroc at a glance took in these details, a sweet voice said to him in a perfect French, "Monsieur, can you not arrange for me to speak a moment to the Emperor?" Duroc conducted her to the door of the carriage, and said to the Emperor, "Sire, here is a lady who has braved all of the dangers of the crowd for you." Napoleon bowed and started to address her, but she did not allow him to finish. Carried away by her enthusiasm, she wished him 1,000 welcomes to her native land, and expressed her gratitude for what he had done to free it from the yoke of Russia. Napoleon was so struck with her beauty that he ordered Duroc to find out the name of the belle inconnue. After many inquiries the Marshal learned that her name was Marie Valeska. Of an old but ruined Polish family, 2 years before, at the age of 16, she had married the chief of one of the most illustrious houses of Poland, a man 70 years of age, with a grandchild 9 years older than herself. Count Waleski, who was as intensely patriotic as his young wife, was then staying at his town house in Warsaw. The Emperor requested Prince Poniatowski, in whose palace he was residing, to give a ball, and invite the Count and his wife to be present. The Prince called in person to extend this invitation. Marie was frightened at this special mark of attention, and at first refused to accept, but finally yielded to the entreaties of her husband. At the ball the Emperor paid her many compliments, and the following day wrote her in terms of warm but respectful admiration. He also sent her very handsome presents, but she refused to answer his letters or accept his gifts. Her coldness only increased the ardor of the Emperor, who never yet had met such opposition to his desires. Yielding finally to the importunities of all around her, the chief magistrates of Poland, her family, even her husband, Marie accepted a rendezvous. She was made to believe that the fate of her country was in her hands, that Heaven had chosen her to be the instrument of re-establishing the ancient glory of Poland. Up to this time Napoleon's affaire d'amour had been of short duration, but this attachment was to end only with his departure for St. Helena. With the exception of Josephine, Marie Valeska was the only great love of his life. During the winter Napoleon continued to write Josephine as frequently as before, but a change will be noted in the tone of his letters, which must have been perceived at once by a woman as jealous and suspicious as Josephine. To the Empress at Mayence, Warsaw, 3 January 1807. I have received your letter, mon ami. Your grief has moved me, but we must submit to circumstances. There are too many lands to traverse between Mayence and Warsaw. Before writing you to come, you must wait until I am able to return to Berlin. Although the defeated army is withdrawing, there are many matters for me to settle here. I am strongly of the opinion that you ought to return to Paris, where you are needed. I am well, but the weather is bad. I dearly love thee. Napoleon. Warsaw, 7 January 1807. Mon ami, I am touched by all that you say to me. But the season is cold, the roads are very bad and hardly safe. I cannot consent, therefore, to expose you to so much fatigue and danger. Return to Paris for the winter. Go to the Tuileries, give receptions, and lead the same life that you usually do when I am there. This is my wish. Perhaps I shall soon rejoin you there. But you must certainly give up the idea of traveling 300 leagues at this season, across a hostile country, upon the rear of the army. Believe that it costs me more than you to delay by several weeks the happiness of seeing you, but such is the demand of circumstances and the advantage of affairs. Adieu, ma bonne amie. Be happy, and display character. Napoleon. In 8 letters which Napoleon wrote during the following 3 weeks there is only a repetition of the same words. The weather is too bad, the distances too great, and the roads too dangerous for me to consent to your making the journey. Paris demands your return, to give a little life to the capital. I forbid you to cry, or be sad and uneasy. I wish you to be amiable, gay, and happy. You are very unjust to doubt my love and devotion. The winter was unusually mild for Poland, but the Emperor, whose troops were in winter quarters, did not expect the campaign to reopen before spring. In this he was doomed to disappointment. At the end of January, the Russians began a forward movement, and Napoleon was forced to leave Warsaw to put himself at the head of his army. To the Empress at Paris. Wittenberg, noon, 1 February 1807. Your letter of the 11th January from Mayence made me laugh. I am today 40 leagues from Warsaw. The weather is cold, but fine. Adieu, mon ami. Be happy. Show character. Napoleon. Elo, 3 a.m., 9 February 1807. We had a great battle yesterday. The victory remained with me, but my losses are very heavy. The losses of the enemy, which are still greater, do not console me. Nevertheless, I am writing these few lines myself, although I am very tired, to tell you that I am well, and that I love thee. Napoleon. In another letter written at 6 o'clock on the night of the same day, and in 4 other letters sent during the following week, Napoleon gives further details of the battle. Both in his correspondence and in his bulletins he tries to minimize his losses, which had been enormous. He states that he took 40 cannon, 10 flags, 12,000 prisoners, and only lost 1,600 killed, 3,000 to 4,000 wounded. He says nothing of the vicissitudes of this terrible day, of this victory which was so nearly a defeat, of the terrible suffering of his army from cold and hunger, of regiments and even entire army corps wiped out, of the great personal danger which he had run in the cemetery when he was almost captured by the Russian grenadiers, and only saved by the valor of his guard. He does not speak of the words wrung from his pale lips as the night fell on this field covered with dead and dying. This sight is enough to inspire in princes the love of peace and the horror of war. Well would it have been for Napoleon if he had taken these words to heart. After the battle, the Emperor was too weak to follow up the retiring Russians, and was glad to put his troops again in winter quarters. He selected Osterode for his headquarters, and here for weeks he shared all the privations of his men. During all this time his only residence was a miserable barn, and it was not until he moved to the castle of Finkenstein, the 1st of April, that his quarters became more comfortable. Napoleon's letters to Josephine from Osterode were cold, brief, commonplace, almost insignificant. He spoke of his health, the weather, and ended always with the injunction to be gay. A letter to his brother Joseph under date of the 1st of March gives a better idea of the horrors of this terrible winter campaign. To Joseph at Paris. The officers of the General Staff have not had their clothes off in 2 months, some in 4. I myself have gone a fortnight without removing my boots. We are surrounded with snow and mud, without wine or eau de vie, with no bread, eating only meat and potatoes, making long marches and counter-marches, fighting usually with the bayonet, and obliged to drag the wounded in sleighs, without cover, over a space of 50 leagues. Napoleon. In the 11 letters he sent to Josephine from Osterode, Napoleon says in substance, "Endeavor to pass your time agreeably. Do not worry. I am in a wretched village, where I shall still pass considerable time. I have never been in better health. I have ordered what you want for Malmaison. Be gay and happy. It is my wish. I am looking for the spring, which ought to come soon. I love thee, and wish to see thee gay and happy. They say many foolish things about the Battle of Eylau. The bulletins tell all. The losses are exaggerated rather than understated. I learn that the gossip of your salon in Mayence has been renewed. Make them stop talking. You should not go to a small box in a little theatre. That does not accord with your rank. Attend only the 4 large theatres, and always use the large box. To be agreeable to me you must live in all respects exactly as you do when I am in Paris. Grandeurs have their inconveniences. An empress cannot go to the same places as a private individual. Your letter grieves me. You must not die. You are in excellent health, and you have no reasonable ground of chagrin. You should go to St. Cloud for the month of May, but remain in Paris during April. You must not think of traveling this summer. I know how to do other things than make war, but duty is the first consideration. All my life I have sacrificed everything, tranquillity, self-interest, happiness, to my destiny. These fine phrases were far from satisfying Josephine, who knew that her Napoleon, in spite of his pretended Spartan simplicity, sometimes gave himself distractions. For nearly 4 months at Mayence, Josephine had waited in vain for the permission of the Emperor to rejoin him. Finally, on the 3rd of January, he had expressed his wish that she should return to Paris. This desire he reiterates in 4 other letters, and in more positive form. It was his letter of the 18th which decided her. If you continue to cry, I shall believe you devoid of courage and character. I do not like cowards. An empress should have heart. Nothing remained but to start. The brilliant winter of 1805, after the coronation, had been followed by the 2 dead seasons of 1806 and 1807, and a Paris without a court, without balls, fêtes, or receptions, was very hard on the merchants, who complained bitterly. By order of the Emperor, the princes of the Empire had opened their houses, but this did not make up for the absence of the sovereigns. Leaving Mayence on the 26th of January, the Empress spent the following night at Strasbourg, where a small fête had been improvised in her honor. The hall of the Hôtel of the Prefecture was brilliantly decorated. After a contredanse and a valse, the Empress made the round of the room, addressing with her usual grace and affability a pleasant word to each one of the ladies present. At an early hour on the following morning, Josephine resumed her route, and arrived at the Tuileries at 8 o'clock on the night of the 31st of January. Her return to the capital was announced the next day at noon by a salvo of artillery fired by the guns of the Invalides. A little fatigued by her journey, the Empress did not hold a reception until the 5th, when all the high officials of state called to render their homage. By Monge, President of the Senate, by Fontanes, President of the Corps Législatif, by the President of the Tribunal, the Vicar General of Notre Dame, and the Préfet de la Seine, she was welcomed in speeches almost as flattering as those usually addressed to the Emperor. In spite of all this adulation more or less sincere, Josephine was far from happy. She regretted the absence of her children and of her husband. She was worried over the dangers which Napoleon was running in this distant campaign, and the reports of his liaison with the Belle Polonaise. A few days after her return she wrote Hortense, "My journey has been happy, if I may so call it, when it has separated me so far from the Emperor. I have received 5 letters from him since my departure. I want you to write me, especially as you are not now near to console me. Let me know how you are, also your husband and children. Although I indeed receive more people here than at Mayence, my heart is nevertheless very lonely, and in writing you will still keep me company. Adieu, my dear daughter. I love and embrace you tenderly." During the following month the heart of Josephine was rejoiced by the news of the birth at Milan on the 17th of March of a daughter to Augusta and Eugène, who was named Josephine by order of the Emperor. This was the princess who 20 years later married the son of Bernadotte, Oscar, Crown Prince, and later King of Sweden. Josephine longed to go to Italy to see her first granddaughter in her cradle, but feared to leave Paris without the permission of the Emperor. She wrote Hortense that Eugène was delighted at the birth of his daughter, but complained that he could hardly see her, as she slept all the time. The 1st of April the Emperor changed his residence to Finkenstein, where he occupied a fine chateau built by the governor of Frederick the Great. At this time it was the property of Comte de Donat, Grand Master of the household of the King of Prussia. It is still owned by the same family, and at a recent date the room occupied by Napoleon was carefully preserved in the same condition. Here Napoleon was very comfortably installed, with his staff and his military family. An apartment adjoining his own was fitted up for Madame Valeska. She left at Warsaw her aged husband, whom she was never to see again, and spent 3 weeks with the Emperor. They took all their meals alone and were served by Constant, the valet de chambre of Napoleon. When the Emperor was not with her, Marie passed her time in reading, or in watching from the windows the parades in the court of the chateau, which were often commanded by the Emperor in person. She had a very sweet, even disposition, was always gay and full of life, and Napoleon became more attached to her every day. During the 2 months that he lived at Finkenstein, Napoleon as usual wrote Josephine 2 or 3 times a week. To the Empress at Paris, Finkenstein, 2nd of April, 1807. I have just moved my headquarters to a fine chateau, much like that of Bessières, where there are many fireplaces. This is very pleasant for me, as I often rise during the night and enjoy seeing the fire. My health is perfect, the weather is fine but still cold. The thermometer is at 4 to 5 degrees. Adieu, mon ami. Tout à toi. Napoleon. During the visit of Marie, the letters of Napoleon were even shorter and more commonplace. In them there were only a few lines about the weather, the temperature, the state of his health, and his desire to know that she was gay and contented. Alas, poor Josephine, her days of happiness were about over. After the departure of his inamorata, Napoleon's correspondence once more becomes interesting. To the Empress at Paris, Finkenstein, 2nd of May, 1807. Mon ami, I have your letter of the 23rd April, and am glad to see that you are well, also that you still love Malmaison. They say that the Arch-Chancellor, Cambacérès, is in love. Is that a joke, or is it true? It amuses me, but you have not said a word. I am very well, and the weather is fine at last. Springtime appears, and the leaves begin to push. Adieu, mon ami. 1,000 loving thoughts. Tout à toi. Napoleon. Finkenstein, 10th of May, 1807. I have your letter. I do not know what you mean by ladies in correspondance with me. I love only my little Josephine, good, boudeuse, and capricious, who knows how to quarrel gracefully, as she does everything else, for she is always amiable, except when she is jealous. Then she becomes a regular little devil. But let us return to these ladies. If I must occupy myself with some one among them, I assure you that I should wish them to be pretty rosebuds. Are those of whom you speak in this class? I wish you never to dine except with persons who have dined with me. That your list should be the same for your assemblies. That you never admit at Malmaison, in your inner life, ambassadors and strangers. If you act otherwise, you will displease me. Finally, do not allow yourself to be surrounded by people whom I do not know, and who would not come to your house if I were there. Adieu, mon ami. Tout à toi. Napoleon. 22. 1807. Death of Napoleon Charles. On the 5th of May, a date to be ominous in the annals of Napoleon, the little Crown Prince of Holland died at the age of 4 years and 7 months. Only a few months before, in her hotel in the Rue de la Victoire at Paris, a certain Mademoiselle Éléonore Desnuelles had given birth to a male child who received the name of Léon. He was the fruit of a short liaison between the Emperor and a reader of his sister Caroline. Léon, who bore a striking resemblance to his father, but inherited none of his talents, was destined to live through 4 governments of France and die in poverty at Paris in April 1881 under the Third Republic. These 2 events, apparently without any connection, were to change the destiny of Napoleon, and to have a decisive influence upon the fate of Josephine. The heir presumptive to the imperial throne was dead, and for the first time the Emperor was convinced that it was possible for him to have a direct heir of his own blood. Although the denouement was to be postponed for 2 years and a half, from that time the divorce was absolutely certain. Napoleon Charles, the eldest son of Louis and Hortense, was a child of unusual beauty and intelligence. The Emperor, who loved children, was particularly fond of this little nephew, whom he fully intended to adopt as his heir. He had played with the child as a baby and had seen him develop with great interest. The little Napoleon was sweet, loving, full of life and spirits, adored by his mother and also by his gloomy father. In her unhappy married life, this boy was the joy and the consolation of Hortense, her hope and her pride. During the night of the 4th-5th of May, 1807, the little prince was suddenly attacked by the croup, a disease little understood at that time. In the morning he was better, and the physicians were hopeful of his recovery. But the trouble returned again during the evening, and at 10 o'clock the child passed away. No words can describe the despair of the unfortunate mother. Hortense seemed petrified with grief, and they were afraid that she would lose her reason. Josephine also was overwhelmed with sorrow. She did not dare to leave the Empire, to go to The Hague, but proceeded at once to the Chateau of Laeken, near Brussels, where she wrote Hortense. To Hortense, at The Hague. Laeken, 10 p.m., 14 May, 1807. My dear child, I have just arrived at the Chateau of Laeken, where I await you. Come and give me life. Your presence is necessary, and you also must need to see me, and to weep with your mother. I would have liked to go further, but my strength failed me, and besides I have not had time to notify the Emperor. I have found the courage to come thus far, and I hope that you too will be brave enough to come to your mother. Adieu, my dear daughter. I am overcome with fatigue, but above all with grief. Josephine. The following night Hortense and Louis arrived with their only remaining child, Napoleon Louis, who was then 2 years and a half old. Hortense was like a statue of despair. She did not shed any tears, and her cold calm, her absolute silence, were more alarming than the most violent manifestations of grief. When she spoke, which was rarely, it was only to talk of him. When 10 o'clock struck, she turned to one of her ladies and remarked, "It was at this hour that he died." A special courier had been sent to announce the fatal news to the Emperor. He immediately wrote Josephine. To the Empress at St. Cloud, Finkenstein, 14 May, 1807. I can conceive all the grief that the death of poor Napoleon has caused you. You can understand the pain that I feel. I should like to be near you, in order that you might be moderate and reasonable in your grief. You have been fortunate enough never to lose a child, but it is one of the conditions and penalties attached to our human misery. Let me hear that you have been reasonable, and that you are well. Do you wish to increase my pain? Adieu, mon ami. Napoleon. Finkenstein, 16 May, 1807. I have your letter of the 6th of May. I see by it already the pain that you feel. I fear that you are not responsible, and that you are too much afflicted by the misfortune which has come to us. Adieu, mon ami. Tout à toi, Napoleon. To the Empress at Laeken, Finkenstein, 20 May, 1807. I am in receipt of your letter of the 10th of May. I see that you have gone to Laeken. I think that you can remain there a fortnight. That will please the Belgians, and will serve as a distraction for you. I have noticed with regret that you are not sensible. Grief has its limits, which should not be passed. Take care of yourself for your friend, and believe me most sincerely yours, Napoleon. It will be interesting to read here the letter written the same day by the Emperor to his stepdaughter. To the Queen of Holland, Finkenstein, 20th of May, 1807. My daughter, all the news that I receive from The Hague tells me that you are not reasonable. No matter how legitimate your grief may be, it should have its limits. Do not let it affect your health. Look for distractions. Know that life is full of such trials, and may be the source of so many misfortunes that death is not the greatest of all. Your affectionate father, Napoleon. In 2 other letters to Josephine at Laeken, the Emperor writes in much the same vein. To the Empress at Laeken, Finkenstein, 24th May, 1807. I have your letter from Laeken. I see with regret that you are still full of grief, and that Hortense has not yet arrived. She is not reasonable, and does not deserve to be loved, because she loved only her children. Endeavor to calm yourself, and do not cause me grief. For every evil without remedy, we must find some consolation. Adieu, mon ami. Tout à toi, Napoleon. Finkenstein, 26th of May, 1807. I am in receipt of your letter of the 16th. I see with pleasure that Hortense has arrived at Laeken. I am annoyed at your report of the kind of stupor which she still shows. She should have more courage and control herself. I cannot conceive why they want her to go to the baths. She would be much more diverted at Paris, and find more consolation. Control yourself, be gay, and take care of yourself. My health is very good. Adieu, mon ami. I suffer much on account of your grief, and regret that I am not with you. Napoleon. During a brief visit which he made to Danzig the 1st of June, the Emperor wrote Josephine and also Hortense at the same time. To the Empress at Malmaison, Danzig, 2nd of June, 1807. Mon ami, I have just learned of your arrival at Malmaison. I have no letters from you. I am angry with Hortense. She has not written me a word. I am grieved with all you tell me of her. How does it happen that you have not been able to divert her a little? You cry. I hope that you will get yourself under control, in order that I may not find you entirely sad. I have been at Danzig for 2 days. The weather is very fine, and I am very well. I think more of you than you think of the absent one. Adieu, mon ami. 1,000 loving thoughts. Send this letter to Hortense. Napoleon. To the Queen of Holland, 2nd of June, 1807. My daughter, you have not written me a word in your just and great grief. You have forgotten everything, as if you were never in the future to endure other losses. They tell me that you no longer care for anything, that you are wholly indifferent. I perceive it from your silence. It is not well, Hortense. It is not what you promised us. Your son was all in all to you. Your mother and I are then of no account. If I had been at Malmaison I should have shared your grief, but I should also have wished to have you turn to your best friends. Adieu, my child. Be gay, be resigned. Take care of yourself, in order to fulfill all your duties. My wife is very sad over your condition. Do not cause her more grief. Your affectionate father, Napoleon. 2 days after the Battle of Friedland, Napoleon again wrote to Hortense. To the Queen of Holland, Friedland, 16th of June, 1807. My daughter, I have received your letter dated at Orleans. Your griefs touch me, but I would like to know that you had more courage. To live is to suffer, and the worthy man strives always to remain master of himself. I do not like to see you unjust to the little Napoleon Louis, and to all your friends. Your mother and I had hoped that we were of more account than we seem to be in your heart. I gained a great victory the 14th of June. I am well, and love you dearly. Adieu, my daughter. I embrace you with all my heart. Napoleon. It must be admitted that Napoleon does not appear to advantage in these letters. To a mother stupefied with grief, and to a grandmother almost equally overwhelmed, he has nothing more consoling to say than the injunction to be gay and to seek diversions. Yet Napoleon dearly loved the little prince, and had fully expected to make him his heir. The loss of the child must have been a severe blow both to his affections and his family pride. The Emperor had in his composition much of the stoicism of the American Indian, and under this appearance of nonchalance he may have concealed his own deep sorrow. He really had a very profound sensibility, and was not so callous as his remarks on many occasions would lead one to think. To quote his own words, "Man often appears more cold and selfish than he really is. At one moment he exclaims, 'Friendship is but a name.' At another he says, 'We only feel how much we love when we meet again or during absence.' And again, 'Love for one's children and one's wife are those sweet affections which subdue the soul by the heart and the feelings by tenderness.' In his letters to Fouché and Monge, the Emperor displayed more feeling. To Fouché on the 18th of May he wrote, 'I have been much afflicted by the misfortune which has befallen me. I had hoped for a more brilliant destiny for this poor child.' To Monge, 'I thank you for all that you say regarding the death of the poor little Napoleon. It was his destiny.' Again to Fouché, 'The loss of the little Napoleon has caused me much grief. I wish that his father and mother had received from nature as much courage as myself to know how to endure the evils of life. But they are younger and have reflected less upon the fragility of earthly ties. Such is his philosophy. He is too much of a fatalist to feel any revolt against death. He is always ready; for every day, at every moment, he faces it, and the unexpected does not disconcert him. Manifestations of grief are forbidden by his calling, by his duty as a commander. He had faced death on too many bloody fields to be appalled by the everlasting night, when deep sleep falleth on men. After a short stay at Laeken, Hortense went with Josephine to Malmaison, and a few days later proceeded to Cauterets in the Pyrenees to take the baths. Her mother wrote her from St. Cloud on the 27th May. I have often cried since your departure, my dear Hortense. This separation has been very painful to me. I have received news of your son. He is at the Chateau of Laeken, in good health, and awaiting the arrival of the king. The Emperor has written me again. He participates deeply in our grief. I needed this consolation, for I have none since your departure. Adieu, my dear daughter. Take care of yourself, for a mother who tenderly loves you. On the 4th of June, Josephine again wrote from St. Cloud. Your letter has comforted me very much, my dear Hortense. The Emperor has been strongly affected. In all his letters he tries to give me courage, but I know that he has been much moved by this unfortunate occurrence. The King reached Saint-Leu last night. He has let me know that he is coming to see me to-day. He must leave the little one with me during his absence. You know how much I love this child, and the care that I will take of him. It is my wish that the King follow you. It will be a consolation for you both to see each other. All the letters that I have received from him since you left are full of his attachment for you. Your heart is too sensitive not to be touched by it. Adieu, my dear girl. Take care of your health. I embrace you tenderly. This letter displays all the goodness and kindness of Josephine's nature. She endeavors to soften the reproaches of Napoleon, and to bring Hortense and her husband together. A week later she wrote, Your son is in splendid health. He greatly amuses me. He is so sweet. I think that he has all the ways of the dear child whom we mourn. Josephine knew how to console better than the Emperor. While Hortense was in the depths of despair, and her mother was trying to assuage her grief, the Emperor brought to an end this terrible campaign of Poland by the brilliant victory of Friedland. He tells the story to Josephine in his usual concise, graphic style. To the Empress at St. Cloud, Friedland, 15th of June, 1807. Mon ami, I write you only a word, for I am very tired. My children have worthily celebrated the anniversary of Marengo. The Battle of Friedland will also be celebrated, and equally glorious for my people. The whole Russian army put to rout. 80 cannon, 30,000 men killed or prisoners. 25 generals killed, wounded or taken. The Russian Guard crushed. It is a worthy sister of Marengo, Austerlitz, Jena. The bulletin will tell you the rest. My loss is not considerable. I maneuvered the enemy with success. Be reassured and content. Adieu, mon ami. Napoleon. Friedland, 4 p.m., 16th of June, 1807. Mon ami, I sent you a courier yesterday with the news of the Battle of Friedland. Since then I have continued the pursuit of the enemy. Königsberg, a city of 80,000 souls, is in my power. I have found there many cannon, large magazines, and more than 60,000 guns, brought from England. Adieu, mon ami. My health is perfect, although I have a slight cold from the rain and the coolness of the bivouac. Be content and gay. Tout à toi, Napoleon. From Tilsit on the 19th of June, the Emperor sent Josephine the welcome news that the victory had been decisive, and that the campaign was over. A few days later he wrote that he had met the Tsar Alexander, and was very much pleased with him. He is a very handsome, good, and young Emperor, and has more intelligence than most people think. He is coming tomorrow to take up his residence in Tilsit. At Tilsit, the Tsar and the King of Prussia dined every day with the Emperor, as he tells Josephine in his correspondence. An hour after her arrival, Napoleon paid a visit to the Queen of Prussia, who was one of the most beautiful and most attractive women of her day. When she came to dine with him that evening, the Emperor received her with great respect at the door of his mansion. But he was firm in his refusal to mitigate at her request any of the hard conditions of the peace which he imposed on Prussia. At dinner that night, the Queen offered a beautiful rose to Napoleon, saying with a gracious smile, "Take it, sire, but in exchange for Magdebourg." This episode is alluded to by the Emperor in the following letter. To the Empress at St. Cloud, Tilsit, 7th of July, 1807. Mon ami, the Queen of Prussia dined with me yesterday. I had to refuse to make some concessions to her husband which she endeavored to obtain from me. But I have been gallant, while adhering to my policy. She is very amiable. Later I will give you the details which it would take too long to tell now. When you read this letter, peace with Prussia and Russia will be concluded, and Jerome recognized as King of Westphalia with 3 millions of population. This news for you only. Adieu, mon ami. I love thee, and wish to know that thou art gay and contented. Napoleon. After a last interview with the Czar, at the end of which the two sovereigns embraced each other affectionately, the Emperor went for a short visit to Königsberg. Leaving there at 6 o'clock on the night of the 13th of July, he traveled directly to Dresden, where he arrived at 5 o'clock on the 17th. He spent 92 hours in his carriage, stopping to rest only twice en route, and then only for very brief intervals. From Dresden he wrote Josephine the last of his letters during this campaign. To the Empress at St. Cloud, Dresden, noon, 18th July, 1807. Mon ami, I arrived at Dresden at 5 o'clock last evening, feeling very well, although I remained 100 hours in my carriage without getting out. I am staying here with the King of Saxony, with whom I am well pleased. I have therefore covered half the distance to thee. It may happen that one of these fine nights I shall fall upon thee at St. Cloud like a jealous husband. I give thee fair warning. Adieu, mon ami. It will give me great pleasure to see thee. Tout à toi, Napoleon. At 6 o'clock on the morning of the 27th of July, the Emperor was back at St. Cloud after an absence of over 10 months. End of chapters 21 and 22.